Welcome everybody back to Veil of Sound. And this time, well, legend, he wouldn't accept the word legend, but this guy in doom metal and metal circles is a legend.
You're too kind.
I have a pleasure of having Aaron Stainthorpe here with me. So Aaron, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. It's a lovely day, and it's a shame we couldn't do this outside in a lovely park with a nice cup of tea, but here we go.
Well, next time you come to Germany, we'll do it outside, no problem.
There we go. There we go.
And yeah, a cup of tea would also be my choice.
Yeah, I've got tea and I've got orange juice, so I'm okay. I'm well hydrated.
So Aaron, yeah, you go ahead.
I'm expecting a call from my doctor. If it happens, let's just go with it.
We'll record it.
Yeah, okay. Let everybody know
that you're hopefully in perfect health and condition.
Yeah.
Aaron, when looking up your discography, when looking up your body of work, one thing is striking, and it's your love for the Bible, or what means love, your appreciation, maybe the better word. Question, Old Testament or New Testament?
Old Testament, I think, is more fun. Because I think there's a lot more death and destruction. I mean, for a religious text, I mean, they've all got death and destruction in, but this one, really literally hammers it home. And everybody comes out quite bad, and I'm surprised people follow that sort of thing, because recently, to sort of, I don't know, to perhaps discover my my inner well-being, I've been attending a local Buddhist center. I'm not becoming a Buddhist. I wanted to see what it was like. And I go every Friday morning, and you get free tea and cake, and it doesn't cost anything. So you just go down and you sit with these people for half an hour, and they just breathe and talk very gently and give you tea and cake. And I think, well, this is the kind of religion I like. And at no point does Buddha appear to be raining fire down on people. Do you know what I mean? And starving them to death and all the rest of it. And so it seems that whoever chose to put all that in the Bible is some kind of psychopath, I think.
Yeah. I mean, like, we have been seeing TV shows about genocide, about incest, about pedophiles, about whatever you want to call it. And everybody's like, oh, they are so inventive and new. And I think, read the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Basically, everything is in there.
Yeah, and you always hear, I mean, it's amazing, really, the endless stories of priests who have, been fiddling with children and what have you, and the Pope covers it up. And they just brush it under the carpet and pretend it doesn't exist when everybody knows it does exist. What kind of a religion is that?
A bad one.
It is a bad one, yeah.
Let's put it like that. I wouldn't call myself a believer. I have respect for everybody who follows a Christian belief and really follows the original idea. I only have a problem with the institution. That is my problem.
Yeah, I mean...
I like the pilot, but the ground personal just sucks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the Bible could have been a lot thinner. It could have just said, "Be nice."
Yeah.
It's not difficult.
When the reason why I asked this initial question is, I mean, like, there are religious elements and ideas on the new Parasite record. That's the reason why we're having this talk, your debut album. But I had a feeling as if it's a little less of that. Is that just my notion?
It is a little less, because with My Dying Bride and some of the other things I've done with other bands, the Bible's great to dip into because it's full of horror stories.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, what I like, the sort of dark elements of life and God. But with Parasite, we're still kind of gothic, but we didn't want the ravens and the cemeteries style of gothic. We wanted the more industrial, more modern version, which is why the album cover looks like concrete and spray paint rather than, a woman in black in a misty forest. I like both, but High Parasite is a much more contemporary band. And, we are fully aware of what's going on in the world, but and we touch upon certain subjects.
Yeah.
But we're not going to ram it home. We're not preaching anything, and we're not political in such a way. You can still enjoy High Parasite as a form of escapism. We're not going to be constantly reminding you of how horrible the world is.
Yeah.
So it's still escapism to some degree, but we do touch upon certain, current events without ramming it home. And we literally we gloss over it almost. It's mentioned and then it's gone. And then we go on to something else. We're not ramming it home because people are sick of it anyway.
Yeah, and I think to rub the salt a little deeper into the wound very often will not do any good.
No.
Interestingly, you've already mentioned the term Gothic. And you are right when talking about Gothic in the industrial way. When I listened to the record, I felt like, okay, this is more kind of Blade Runner than the Castle of Otranto.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And what's wrong with that? They both have their, their very dark undertones, and we love all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But well, I think when you say Gothic, people do automatically just think of, I don't know, something a bit moribund and someone perhaps just dressed in black, moping around, not smiling and not being very...
No electricity.
Yeah, and the genre is way bigger than that. It's huge, and we are the death rock pop part of it.
Yeah.
And that's a cool thing to be in, because obviously being in My Dying Bride for over 30 years, you build up a certain following and you become a certain kind of person, and that you maintain that. And then suddenly when you're thrust into something else like High Parasite, although it's still metal and it's still gothic, it's completely different to My Dying Bride. It's full of energy and it's exciting, and it's almost like fun goth, if that's even a thing. That's a new genre there, fun goth. And it's punchy and exciting, and it's really nice. I didn't really know I needed something like that in my life until it came along, and I thought, this is fantastic.
It's interesting that you mentioned like it came along and the special meaning that the band has for you. High Parasite has been kept secret for quite some time. I guess the history of the band is much longer than the history of what we know. So how long has it been boiling underneath the surface? How long has the band been a thing?
It's about 3 years now, but not really as a band. It was about 3 years ago when Tombs sent me an email saying, Aaron, I've written this piece of music. Just everything's done on a laptop. And he plays all the instruments. And he said, I've done some vocals, but I can't do death metal. Can you do some death metal vocals on this song for me? And I've known him for years and years and years. So I said, yeah, of course I can. No problem at all. So I did some death metal vocals, and it really worked. And we both thought it was great. And then he sent me a couple more songs, and it clearly was a thing. And so he decided, I'm going to form a band. And I said, great. Good luck with that. I'm not getting involved. It's your thing. You do what you want. And then he formed a band, and he invited me to the studio to record a demo. And I went along and I met these people I'd never seen before. And I did some death metal vocals. I think I did a little bit of clean vocals as well, just for variety. And then a record label came knocking. And then we were suddenly recording an album with Greg from Paradise Lost, who, again, I've known for 1,000 years. And
a peaceful, stable, right?
Yeah. And then it just appeared that I was somehow now in this band. They never asked me to join, and I didn't ask to join. I just evolved into one of the singers. So I do dual vocals with Tombs, and then we've got these other three guys. And we now appear to be a fully functioning band. But yeah, as I say, that first song probably came over about 3 years ago, but it most certainly wasn't a band. We didn't even have a name. I think the name came about a year later. And so the band itself as a unit of people is probably 2 years old, but the thing is 3 years old.
But interestingly, you were still able to keep this quiet for nearly 2 years or so, because the first thing that I read about it was like back in May, I think.
We
So,
wanted to do that because it's so often you see bands growing up in public, and we really didn't want that. We didn't want, you know, to put something on the social media saying, "Hey, everybody, I'm in another band. Isn't that exciting? Something will be coming soon." And then when a song comes, "Hey, everybody, here's the first song. It's a rough demo, blah blah blah." I didn't want to go through all that. Plus, I didn't even know I was in the band. So, you know, I can't really release someone else's stuff because it's their stuff. And so it was the idea of Danny Toombs saying, "Look, I'm not going to grow up in public. Let's get something formed, and when we're all happy with it, we'll explode upon the world, seemingly from nowhere." And we did, and it was a plan that kind of worked quite well. I mean, some people might think, well, if you'd have told people about High Parasite a bit earlier, you could have got on some more of the summer festivals, maybe, because, you know, it was too late to get on the festivals because we announced it at such a weird time. And even because the album doesn't come out till next Friday.
Yeah, for transparency's sake, for everybody who's now asking, this, of course, when you watch this, it's October. The record comes out on September 27th.
Yeah. And even that's too late for festivals to book us next year.
Yeah.
So 2025, you know, the festivals are already booked up. So we're kind of trying to do bits here and there. And then once the album's out and everybody figures out who we are, I think 2026 is probably going to be the year when we're on the road all the time.
It's nice to hear that you also plan to really take this on the road. It's not just a studio project. It's, as you said, a real band.
It's a real band, yeah, and I want to make sure that people know it's not a project, because it's not, as I mentioned earlier, it's got nothing to do with me. I just rocked up and did some death metal vocals. So it's not my project. I'm in another band, and we want to play everywhere. For some strange reason, My Dying Bride never managed to get to Japan and Australia and some of the far-flung places on Earth. And I'm kind of hoping High Parasite might get me there.
I could see you working in Japan. Yes, definitely. There are things about the record where I say, okay, that should go down well on the other side of the earth.
Yes,
Yeah, definitely.
So. That'd be great.
It's also interesting to hear you talk about how the way it evolved and how Toombs started writing these tracks. And is that still the way that this is the way High Parasite works? He writes the songs and the others flesh them out?
That's exactly how it works. He's informed me quite recently, he's written 11 new songs. I know, and nobody's heard them. And basically he will, you know, I will do some vocals, and then we'll send it to the other members and they will learn it. And he will obviously show them all the notes and blah blah blah. And so he never stops writing. He's quite a prolific worker when it comes to music. He doesn't switch off and put the Xbox on or go for a walk or eat or sleep. None of those trivial things.
None of these stupid things.
Yeah, that everyone else seems to get involved with. He loves writing music, and you know, hence he's got enough material for the second album already. And which is exciting. I mean, I don't want to hear it yet because I'm still trying to learn the lyrics for the first gig. And so I said, right, hold on to those songs. Let's get the Cradle of Filth tour out the way.
Yeah.
And in sort of mid-November, start feeding me 3 songs at a time, and I'll work my way through them. Because if you send all of them, it'll be overwhelming and it will look like a mountain to climb and hard work, and it will take the fun out of it. If we do it in bite size, that will be great.
That also leads me to 2 questions, and basically you already answered the first one. So he also writes the lyrics?
Sometimes, because sometimes music will arrive and he's already got clean vocals on it, which he's written, and sometimes there's a gap in the text and he says, Aaron, do death metal vocals on this riff. I've left it clean, so just write your own lyrics. Other times there are lyrics already in place and I will death metal those. And there were a couple of occasions where he sent music with no singing whatsoever, all lyrics, and I've written up the whole thing, and there's moments where I've written clean vocals for him, and I've sung them as a guide, and when I sent them to him, he says, they sound great. I don't need to sing on this. You've already done it. So I'm doing clean vocals and death vocals. I'm doing some lyrics. I'm sometimes doing all the lyrics. I'm sometimes doing hardly any lyrics. So it's very, very flexible, and I'm happy like that.
And it also proves much more that it's a band. And how do you feel when you have to insert lyrics into spots that he left open for you? Is it harder to fill those gaps, or is it harder to write the lyrics for a complete song?
No, it's much easier to fill the gaps because you read what's gone on before, and that is like the seed. The seed is planted, and you flourish it with manure and water, and it grows into a song. And whereas if you start with a blank canvas, which some people might think that's the best way to start, then you've got to come up with the ideas yourself, and you're not, then you, which is obviously I've been doing it for years. I know how to do it, but it's easier when someone's already begun the operation, and you can take over and finish it off. That's much easier. And I try to make sure that my style doesn't drift into My Dying Bride too much, because Tomb's lyrics are nothing like My Dying Bride. So when he starts a song, I've got to make sure I stay within the realms of his work, and not immediately go down My Dying Bride and try and shoehorn My Dying Bride lyrics into High Parasite. That's not going to work. So I keep them completely different. My Dying Bride is much more poetical and flamboyant. A High Parasite is a punch in the face.
Yeah. Yeah. What I also like, and that's the other question you've already hinted at, you have a few select shows coming up. There are 3 at the beginning of October, if I remember correctly, and then there is a tour. But maybe you yourself tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the first show is September the 28th in our hometown of Bradford. And we're all super nervous because, we've never performed live together. Obviously, we've rehearsed, but it's not the same thing. So we're all very nervous about that. I'm even more nervous because I've no idea what I'm going to do on stage. Because obviously with My Dying Bride, I know exactly what I'm doing on stage because I have total control over the songs and the words and my delivery. With High Parasite, Tombs is singing as well. And I don't know what I'm going to be doing in between the gaps. Dancing? I don't know. I might have to learn some slick moves.
Limbo?
Yeah, something like that. Tambourine. We've discussed all these things. So that's very exciting. And then a couple of days after, we're heading to Holland, and we've got 3 shows in the Netherlands. And then we come back for a week or so, and then we're on to a British tour with Cradle of Filth. So exciting times. And our agent is looking at all kinds of gigs for next year. As I say, I think it's too late for some of the festivals. Maybe some of the later festivals we might go get on.
That's what I want. That's what I was thinking about.
The earlier ones, they've already
maybe like August or the autumn indoor festivals.
Yeah, possibly like that. Yeah, that would be.
Shout out to my friend Gavin from the Nation. But I think High Parasite would fit perfectly.
Well, yeah. Funnily enough, on the Cradle of Filth tour, they are playing Damnation Festival.
Yeah, they are.
And for us, that was a day off, because the festival's fully booked. And then we got a little phone call saying one of the bands has dropped out. Would High Parasite like to fill in? So
you are already playing.
I only discovered this last night. So it looks like High Parasite will be playing Damnation. Now, I don't know when this interview is going to be aired.
Well, it's October, so I guess that Gavin will announce that in a few days.
Yeah. So
I guess you're safe. If he hasn't announced it yet, here's the announcement.
That's the announcement right there. So what we thought with the day off is now a gig, which is great. It's local. It's Manchester. It's no problem at all. So it's. I mean, I've got the. I mean, when you look at all the dates, are all there. You can't expect to read them, but that's more shows than My Dying Bride have done in 2 years. And so people say, "Oh, how can you still be in My Dying Bride and High Parasite?" Well, that's because My Dying Bride release albums every 3 or 4 years, and only do about 10 or 15 shows a year. I can be in 10 more bands, and it wouldn't affect My Dying Bride. There's loads of space. So this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to fill your time. There is one parallel to My Dying Bride, and that is the fact that you are once again, there is this core duo in High Parasite. You know, in My Dying Bride, you have Andrew, who you've been working with since the start of a band. Now it seems as if Toombs is I don't want to say adopting that role, but he is like the other part of his duo. Do you like working with one main songwriter?
Um, well, that's all I've ever known. So, you know, I've never written a song on my own. I'm not a musician. You know, Toombs plays drums, bass, guitar, keyboards, you know, so he can do it all at home on his laptop and make great music. I can't play an instrument, so I'm really going to, I need other people. I'm fine with words, you know, in fact, I've got on January the 25th, next year, I'm reading some of my poetry out in a cathedral in Antwerp. So you know, I've got that.
Which is, I think it's a Saturday, folks. So you have no excuse not to show up.
I think it is, and it's with Mark Deeks will be with me, and he'll be playing piano and singing some songs from Arth, and Joe Quayle, who plays the electric cello. She'll be there as well, and I think Dark Her are playing, and Sylvain. So it's going to be very an artistic kind of an evening.
Yeah, but it's one of those evenings where everybody afterwards goes out and says like, okay, it's one of the maybe 10, 15 best concert experiences they've ever had. At least it sounds that way. And I'm very sure, knowing your way of putting words together, I'm very sure it's going to be very, very nice.
I hope so. We have discussed it. If it becomes a thing, we might take it on tour.
Yeah, because you got 3 or 4 years, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. As we're already making fun of My Dying Bride and their way of writing, you have released something this year. So I guess we cannot expect anything new until 27, right?
No, not really, because historically, My Dying Bride, when we record an album, we record more songs than are required.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we've done. We have 2 extra songs which have not been on the album and have not yet been released. And I believe Sean has a violin and piano piece that he needs to flesh out and complete. And I will put words on it. So I think at some point, if the record label are up for it, there's 3 new songs ready for another EP. Yeah. So, and we've done that. You know, we've looked back at My Dying Bride's history. Yeah. We've got EPs all over the place.
All over the place, yes.
So there, before the next album, there is, or at least there should be, an EP with 3 brand new pieces of music on.
It's interesting to hear you. I don't want to say being a workaholic, but you know, you looking ahead at so many new songs, because we all know that there are sometimes those people who record something and then they lie down for a few weeks and months and years, and after like 2 years of slumber, they notice, oh, people have forgotten about me. It seems as if making music, singing songs, writing lyrics is still something that you highly enjoy.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been writing poems for as long as I've been writing lyrics, and they are, for the sake of argument, they are one, if not the same thing. Are lyrics poems put to music? Who knows? And so I've now been given the opportunity to take my poetry, to take my words to somewhere new, which is super exciting for me. I'm thrilled about that. And I think maybe I'm overcompensating because I can't play an instrument. I need to ensure that my work is as good as it can possibly be to make up for the fact that I'm not swinging a guitar around. And so I work hard at the lyrics and the poems. You know, I need to make sure that they're great. And I guess the variety of my vocal delivery goes along with that as well. You know, there is, in My Dying Bride and High Parasite, I whisper, I narrate, I do clean vocals, death metal vocals, and I'm even touching on black metal screaming in places. Sometimes, and it's that variety, I think, that I need, because I can't play an instrument. So my voice is my instrument, and my words, my voice and my words together are hopefully enough ammunition to get me by.
Well, they sure are. And I love the humble approach you have, but you're doing quite good. Let's
Thank
talk
you.
about a few of the songs on High Parasite's new record. By the way, everybody, out September 27th via Candlelight and Pious, I think, right? Played against them. There are a few tracks on there where I say, yes, here it's clear. This is that band. This is the other one. And for example, when we look at the beginning of Concentric Nightmares, what, by the way, one of the reasons why I think it would work in Japan. That is something that I think would not be possible in My Dying Bride, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't write the stuff, so but Toombs is a big fan of. I mean, he is also the guitar tech for Greg McIntosh, and has worked with My Dying Bride for many years as a crew member as well. So he loves this kind of music and other similar sorts of music. And so this is exactly what he wants to create. And so working with me and Greg, you know, we're all friends together. And it seems that Toombs is in his element. You know, he's working with his friends. He's writing what he wants to write. People seem to love it, and it's absolutely brilliant. And we have to keep it separate from My Dying Bride, because it'd be pointless me being in two My Dying Brides. Why would I want to do that? It's pointless. And so I'm glad that it's nothing like. Of course, there'll be tiny elements where my voice might sound a bit like the singer of My Dying Bride, strangely.
Yeah, because it's still your voice. I mean, like, come on.
Yeah. And there of course, there are moments where the guitar sounds like Paradise Lost, because Greg played the guitar as well.
Yeah.
And produced it. And Greg does all the samples as well, which is what he did on Host. So there's a lot of elements of other bands in there. And we're not hiding that. We're not trying to disguise the fact that, you know, there are elements of Depeche Mode, Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride in High Parasite. They're there, and they're there for all to see. It's not a secret.
Yeah. There is a lot of industrial in there. I thought of like stuff like Ministry, Killing Joke. There is a lot of that in there, like the very melodic side of industrial. And that is also something that I loved about it, you know. It's very melodic, and at the same time, it's never bubblegum stuff, if for lack of a better word.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, I don't know who labeled it death pop. It might have been me, but it's not. It's definitely not bubblegum pop.
Yeah.
It's in your face, noisy, and I know what you mean about some of the industrial stuff as well. I mean, there's some chugging away that sounds like Rammstein almost. It's just
sometimes
heavy, simple and heavy and in your face, and that's exactly what we want. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're just trying to write songs that are as catchy as possible, that still have an edge to them, without bleeding too far into, as you mentioned, bubblegum pop. But, you know, they can still have an edge and be catchy, and everyone can sing along to them in their car, in the shower, anywhere. But they've still got that rock and roll edge.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that. I also feel that the vocals are very, very nicely integrated into the sound. Did Greg also do the mixing and mastering, or who did that?
No, that was all engineered by other people whose names I've really forgotten. Greg was there strictly on production values, and which was great. You know, to hear some of his ideas about some of the music was great. And again, Greg made one or two changes, which made the songs, I think, slightly better. And again, because I'm not a songwriter, certainly not in the High Parasite, it didn't bother me that Greg might have said, "Oh, let's take riff number 1 and swap it with riff number 2, because I think that they'll work better." Because I haven't written them, I'm not precious about the songs. You know, I'm not going to be saying, who the hell do you think you are rewriting my songs? You know, it's nothing like that. And because Greg and Toombs get on so well, Greg is able to say, look, we need to change this because I think it'll sound better like that. And that's the way it goes. But when it comes to that nitty-gritty engineering mixing thing, I'm not so sure Greg got involved. He may have done, because, you know, I didn't spend a massive amount of time in the studio, because if you listen to the songs, over and over and over again, you'll begin to hate them. And I absolutely don't want that to happen. So I went to the studio when I fancied it and when I had work to do, but I wasn't there every day because it would have killed me.
It would take the fun out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. But so I don't know how much Greg was there, but I do believe that on the artwork layout, I'm sure it says mixed and mastered by Lawrence. Somebody, sorry, Lawrence, I've forgotten your name. And produced by Greg.
It's interesting that you mentioned the artwork, because there is something about My Dying Bride that is really outstanding and has been outstanding for the band's inception till now. And that is the logo, or the lettering, let's put it like that. It's very easily recognizable. And now with High Parasite, you again have an easily recognizable logo. Were you, who is also a visual artist, were you involved in that, or did somebody else do that for you?
Well, I tried to come up with a concept for the High Parasite logo, and Toombs beat me to it with the simple HP look, and it looks great. It looked way better than anything I came up with, and we just thought, well, it's dead easy. Let's just go with that. It's simple. It's effective. It works really well. You don't even need the rest of the words. Once the band's become very well known, the HP can sit by itself. You don't even need to write High Parasite. Yeah. So I think he's really nailed it. It's like Iron Maiden's logo. You know, once you've got a great logo, that's half the job done. People, it's a brand, isn't it? And it's brand recognition, and I think we've nailed it straight away.
You did, definitely. We have been talking about Peaceville slightly and shortly. I have to ask that because one of the former Peaceville bands is now back with death metal growls. Opeth are back. How do you feel about that? Are you over the moon, or how do you feel about Mikael rumbling along once in a while again?
Well, it's entirely up to him. You know, it's his decision. I don't know if he was swayed by public enthusiasm or what. And it is unusual for people to return to it. Normally, I think when you've given up doing death metal vocals, and you go away and do something else, it's rare to come back, because I think quite often death metal vocals are something you do when you're a young, angry person, because it's a way of venting your frustration.
Yeah.
And as you grow a bit older,
and when your vocal cords are better.
Yeah, exactly. And and you can do all that when you're young. Yeah. And as you get a bit older, it becomes more difficult to do death metal vocals. Of course it does. And I think you become less angry with the world and more settled within yourself and your life. And there's no need to scream and shout quite so much. Why he's chosen to bring death metal vocals back, who knows? But he's pretty good at it. So so you know, who's going to complain?
Nobody. I am also very sure that nobody will complain about High Parasite's vocals. And I have to ask one thing about the vocals, because you've talked about Toombs delivering some of the clean vocals, you doing some death metal vocals, some clean vocals. Is there a female voice on the title track on Parasite? Is there a female vocal
Heather,
somewhere in the mix?
Heather, who is Greg's wife. And she's also from the band Tapping the Vein.
Oh, okay.
And she's got an amazing voice. Again, I've known Heather for a long time. And unfortunately, I wasn't in the studio when she was there. So when I heard
you would have distracted her too much.
Yeah, well, this is it. I have that problem. And when I heard her voice, I thought, oh my God, she's amazing. Yeah. It just works so well. I think she's on three or four songs on the album. And she really just embellishes the work that's already in place. At no point do we kind of push her to the fore and say, you know, this is a female-fronted song.
Yeah.
She's there as a chorus role, but she does it extremely well. Her voice is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think her voice is like the connection between yours and Toombs, and it's as you say, she is a little bit backwards or a little behind in the mix, but she is that little tiny touch that, for example, Parasite needs to work as cleverly as it does, because your delivery and Tomb's delivery already works together very nicely, but there is this little tiny gap, and that is where Heather comes in.
It is,
The
yeah.
way you describe it is you didn't know about it, right?
I didn't know about it. No, I didn't even know we were having female vocals. And uh, I went to the studio towards the end of recording to hear some final mixing. And again, no one said, "Oh, look, you're going to wait till you hear Heather. She's amazing." No one even mentioned she was on it. And then suddenly, I'm here with these massive, great speakers, and the music's blasting out. And then suddenly, I hear her, and I'm saying, "Who the hell's this? Who's?" And then, it's Greg's wife. And I think, God, it's fucking amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I love it. And so, immediately we're thinking, well, we need her on the second album as well, and we want Greg to produce the second album as well. So let's see how that goes. But we seem to have a really good combination. The people we've got around us seem to be gelling very, very well together, and that bodes well for the future.
It's also a way that I think that nobody on this group of people has to prove him or herself.
Yeah.
There are no egos involved.
Yeah, everybody's completely relaxed. I mean, because I've known Greg for forever. You don't walk into the studio and see him and go, "Oh my God, it's Greg. Oh God, oh, my trousers don't fit me anymore." We just we had a hug and then we get on with it. It's as simple as that.
Although that a lot of people with you or with Greg would do the Wayne's World, we're unworthy,
well,
anyway, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to test you, because nobody leaves a Veil of Sound interviews without having to go through my infamous quickfire round.
Okay.
You will always get two alternatives, and you have to choose between those two and maybe give a short explanation for it. It could be something like Pepsi versus Coca-Cola, AC versus DC, or my favorite at the moment, Kamala versus the Idiot. And let's start with Paradise Lost. Which record would you rather put on right now, Gothic or Draconian Times?
Gothic.
Mm-hmm. Any reason for it, apart from it being a masterpiece in itself?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you've heard this before. It's like choosing your children. You just
I only have one. It's easy.
Well, yeah, me too. But it's like, well, okay, this one's got these elements and this one has those elements. Yeah, but this one does that, but this one does something different. Yeah, I know. It's one or the other. You literally flip a coin and you will not be disappointed with the outcome.
It's true. You will see that I looked a little bit at the old Peaceville roster when I came up with these questions.
Okay.
2 records by Anathema, Serenades versus Eternity.
Well, you might not believe this, but I've heard neither of those records. I made it a purpose of mine not to get too involved in Anathema and Paradise Lost as My Dying Bride were growing, because I didn't want elements of their music interfering with my music, because you can't steal someone else's work, but if you listen to it and enjoy it, it buries itself.
It's subconscious influence.
Of course, and then when you're writing your next song, it might come out, and then when you release it, everybody goes, "That sounds suspiciously like Anathema." So I made a point of steering clear of both bands.
Yeah.
And still do. I couldn't name whatever the last Anathema or PL albums were. I don't know.
With PL, it's easy for me because it's a band I've been following for decades. It's Obsidian, but easy. But then the other few questions might be similarly difficult for you. Catatonia, Dance of December Souls versus Discouraged Ones.
Yeah.
Same one?
No idea.
Okay.
Though I did, I had a great time with Jonas on the 70,000 tons of metal cruise ship this January. Yeah. Seemingly every night, me and him were in the English bar, drinking wine and just watching the world literally go by, and it was wonderful. He's such a lovely guy, and their shows were great. But yeah, similar thing. I without, I'm not being rude.
No,
I don't own any Catatonia records, but I don't have to. When I saw them live on that cruise ship, they were amazing, and I think if I get overindulgent with them, I'll end up borrowing their ideas, and I really don't want to do that.
Then the next one might be of a similar outcome, and that's the last one. Opeth, Orchid versus Blackwater Park.
Yeah.
Same one?
Yeah, it's going to be the same sort of thing. I mean, I'm familiar with the earlier stuff, obviously, because when a new band comes along to Peaceville, you know, we all get nosy of, you know, who are these guys and what do they sound like. It was the same with early Dark Throne. You know, when Ted came over, and you know, we all went to the pub, and it was great. And you know, and yeah, I own no Dark Throne records. It's a weird thing. And yet I could go to the Peaceville office, and Hammy would happily say, "Aaron, help yourself to all these records. They're all free of charge." And I just kind of said, "No, you're all right." And I never bothered. And now, of course, I'm regretting it. But you know, it is what it is. I didn't want to be influenced too much by. I knew, you know, when a band is going to be good, and you just think to yourself, I can't listen to that because it's going to sink into my blood, and I'm going to start writing about it, and then there'll be so many parallels with My Dying Bride and whoever that it will be silly. So, in order to keep my own identity, I've lost out listening to some great music.
It's interesting that you say that, because Emil Amos from Grails said something similar last year when I talked to him, and he was like, "Don't ask me about any Radiohead stuff. I can tell you I like this, I like that, but I intentionally don't try to listen to the records." And I was like, that is a very interesting thing, and it's interesting that you mentioned that as well. Maybe the next two are easier because it's not two albums by a band, but two bands against each other. Also, two bands that were in Peaceville at the time. Pitch Shifter versus Napalm Death. Let's go smack dab in your face.
God, I mean, we gigged with Pitch Shifter a long, long time ago, and gosh, I've not heard their music for such a long time. So I would have to go with Napalm, because they're such a ferocious band live, and yet Barney is such a lovely bloke, and he's
but on stage he is destroying you all.
Oh, he's an animal. Yeah, but he's absolutely brilliant. Whereas I think, and they're still going. I don't know if Pitch Shifter is still going.
I don't think so. I think they've been on hiatus for like years and years. Anybody out there, if I'm wrong, correct me and write it down in the comments here on YouTube.
Yeah, so I don't really remember much about Pitch Shifter, so it's difficult to make an opinion about them, but I'm still fully aware of Napalm.
The next two bands are still going. Dark Throne versus Mayhem.
Oh, that's a tough one. Because
I never said it would be easy.
I go back to the days of tape trading and fanzines and that kind of thing. I remember hearing a Mayhem demo, Jesus, 40 years ago or however long ago it was. And I loved it, and it was literally mayhem. And I thought it was great. And then Dark Throne were doing something similar, but then Dark Throne, they changed their style more than Mayhem did. And then depending on how much you like your favorite band to evolve or remain the same, I think Dark Throne changed. And I think when Dark Throne went a bit more sort of almost commercial death metal, if that is a thing.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it sounded great, but of course everybody's like, "Oh my God, this is outrageous! They're supposed to be the best black metal band ever. Why are they doing this?" And there's nothing wrong with evolving, So I think I'd probably go with Mayhem because they've remained, I think, closer to their roots. But as I say, and I'm being contrary already because I like the fact that Dark Throne made efforts to sound different. But I'm still picking
again one of those two. You cannot choose wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I have two more music-related questions and then one at the end. One for me, two of the most British bands ever are King Crimson versus Genesis. And Genesis, sorry to say it like that, but with Collins behind the mic, duct tape over his mouth, no singing.
Okay. Well, I don't know much about either band, but I did hear King Crimson recently, and I didn't realize how much that band and Voivod were
Yeah.
quite similar in places. I was quite surprised because I was a fan of Voivod for a long, long time, and then someone, I think it was on the radio, a King Crimson song came on the radio, and I thought this sounds remarkably like Voivod.
Yeah.
And so I suddenly, my ears pricked up a bit, and I thought I must pay a bit more attention to King Crimson. Whereas Genesis, it's something your parents like. It's not my cup of tea, and I'm sorry if I've offended anybody there. It's parent radio stuff you hear in the car and you fall asleep. I know there's more. I know there's more to it than that, but that's my impression.
Yeah,
So
that's totally fine. A question for you and me. What do you prefer, the vibrancy of long hair or the easiness of a bald one?
Oh, this is way easier. I mean, I cut my hair when I had when my daughter was a baby. I sit her on my lap, and she used to pull my hair out and try and eat it. And I thought instantly then that, do you know what? I'm going to shave my head. And everyone's like, that's a bit radical, just because your child's pulling your hair out. And I thought, no, well, I've been thinking about it for a while. My dad was a military man, always had very, not cropped hair, but neat, short back and sides, military style hair. And
you lived in Germany once, didn't you?
Yeah, I lived there for 15 years. And
so wie ist dein Deutsch?
Well, that went when we moved back to England, because I thought, well, I would never need it. I would never need it ever again.
Yeah.
And so I went to a hairdresser's in Leeds, and I walked in, and it was one of these really annoying. Everybody's so cool, man. They've all got the check shirts, and they've all got the tattoos and super cool, and all the rest of it. And I walked in and they're like, "Hey, dude, what can we do for you, man?" And I'm thinking, "You're from Leeds. Stop talking like that." And I said, "Oh, can you shave all this off?" And this guy was like, "Oh my God, everybody, stop what you're doing." And then he made this big deal about this guy's wants me to take all his hair off. And then they're all high-fiving each other. And I'm thinking, look, if you don't
just do it.
Yeah, I'm going somewhere else if you don't crack on. And so, scissors first, then the thing. And I said, keep it a bit like this, a number 2 or something like that. And then when they finished, I said, that's too long. Get it right down. And so they, and at the end of it, they put oil on and everything. And I thought, oh, great, that's brilliant. And I said, what kind of tools do I need to maintain it? What sort of clippers do you use? And brilliantly, he gave me the clippers and said, "Brother, you use these." And I thought, wow, that's cool. And then this was an embarrassing moment. So he gave me these heavy duty industrial clippers that barbers use, which must have cost a couple of £100. In my back pocket was a voucher for this hairdresser's for £10 off. And I thought, I can't get it out of my pocket. He's just given me these clippers. It would be so rude if I pulled out this voucher for £10 off. So I said, "This is amazing. Thank you very much." And I've still got those clippers today. They're fantastic.
And the last one, and I'm not sure that you will watch either of those, but if you had to watch one of these reunions announced in the last couple of weeks, would it be Oasis or Linkin Park?
Oh God.
You're not forced to. You can choose if you want to.
Well, I mean, if there was a gig on, both bands were playing on the same night in the same town, I'd go and see Linkin Park, because it's just the noise and the aggression. I mean, Oasis just ripped off the Beatles. They did it very well, and they're very competent musicians. So they're okay. But for the punch in the face attitude, I would prefer Linkin Park.
Mm. So, Aaron, thanks for all the insight into the new record. Thanks for all the fun and laughter. And for everybody, remember, in November, you can see them on stage in the UK. And until then, listen to their new record out September 27th on Candlelight. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Cheers. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. And I hope to see you on the road sometime.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Cheers.